The Transformers Prime finale movie is, appropriately enough, an interesting beast. I mentioned in my review of the final proper episode of the show that I don't feel like the show needed a follow-up movie. I feel like the ending that we got to the show proper was a sufficient ending to the show. So I guess technically I feel like this movie is not necessary, and yet I don't think it's bad or that we shouldn't have gotten it. It does tell an interesting story which flows well from the events of that final episode. It flows logically, it makes sense in the context of the show's lore, and even furthers the lore of this universe a bit too. It follows the premise that back during the war, the Autobots sent the Allspark, the source of life on Cybertron, out into space so that the Decepticons couldn't make use of its vast power. And now, even though they have made the planet habitable again, it can't produce new life until the Allspark is returned to it. And so Optimus heads out into space to recover the Allspark and return it to Cybertron. But in the meantime, Predacons is on Cybertron. And so are Shockwave and Starscream, who are attempting to revive more Predacons so that they can try to take the planet from the Autobots. But while these Predacons, these new Predacons, are not as powerful as Predacon himself, and there are only 2 of them, they're still powerful enough that in one-on-one combat, the Autobots don't stand a chance, and they can still fly, and they still have powerful and dangerous beast modes. So even in fights that are unevenly stacked against them, there's no guarantee that they'll be easily defeated. And on top of that, Predacon does get wind of them and wants to add them to his ranks instead, because he wants his people. Then you have Knockout, who is being held by the Autobots on the Nemesis, who has to effectively prove himself and that he really does intend to side with the Autobots from this point forward. Though I don't really ever feel like he does that sufficiently, which is why I feel like they should have brought him into RID instead of a particular other character, but you can watch my thoughts on RID video to learn who that is. And on top of that, Unicron, like he did in the original The Transformers the movie, resurrects Megatron, but instead of turning him into Galvatron here, he instead effectively possesses and upgrades Megatron's body, giving himself a new avatar with which to interact with the universe, with the intention of returning to Cybertron, which is technically alive again, even if it can't make new living things yet. Meaning that Primus, Unicron's old rival, is alive again, and he wants to kill him. So you have this unstoppable force threatening to undo the greatest victory that the Autobots ever achieved. But you also have Megatron as a free agent, basically. He's been fully subjugated by Unicron, tortured, and enslaved. And while I feel like they probably could have portrayed his journey a little better, this does remind him of the exact kind of oppression that he originally rose up against when he formed the Decepticons in the first place. And he abandons the Decepticon cause. By the time Unicron is driven out of him, like, he doesn't swear fealty to the Autobots or anything, but he declares that the war is over, that he's not going to fight anymore. And it's not like this comes out of nowhere. We have seen Megatron grow increasingly more desperate in time with how much more he declared that his cause was right, which retroactively now feels like he was in denial and trying to justify himself. And we have seen him grow increasingly afraid as things came to a head at the end. He lost control of the situation more and more practically every single week. Like, Megatron is a character who has committed some colossal atrocities, but I'm a sucker for a good guy Megatron, so I'm pretty cool with this change happening here at the end. Even if, like a lot of things in Prime, I feel like it could have been handled a bit better. No, that's pretty cool. The Cybertron setting is neat to see, I guess, in principle, but, like, it's kind of boring and samey after a while. And the action is up to par with Prime as a series, but, like, some of the things that disappoint me about this are they actually come straight out of those details, because while it is up to par, it's not any better than the action in the series proper. So this really does just feel like an extra long episode of the show, or a few episodes of the show, actually, now that I think about it, smashed together into a movie. And even though Optimus is not here for most of the movie, he's out recovering the Allspark, leaving Bumblebee effectively in charge, rising up and taking charge of this team naturally, giving us a really good look at the kind of person and leader he is. Something that was difficult to do up to this point because he didn't really take charge and also didn't have a proper voice. We don't really get like a passing of the torch, a proper passing of the torch, where Bumblebee has to lead the Autobots against what could be a new generation of threat in the form of Starscream, Shockwave, and their Predacons. It ends up just being Optimus versus Megatron again in the end, because of the Hail Mary that is Unicron in Megatron's body. There's like nothing wrong with that. It's still an interesting and compelling plot for this TV movie, but I would have almost rather seen something that, I mean, it wouldn't technically been lower stakes, but like less just involving Megatron again, I guess is the best way to put it, where we get to see this new leader have to avert a new war and befriend the Predacons, because, like, they're not bad guys, right? They don't deserve any of this. And then help to usher in the new age for Cybertron. I also find it super annoying that they do effectively the Hot Rod storyline for Bumblebee here at the end, making him the next leader of the Autobots, the successor to Optimus. And then in the end, Optimus ends up having to sacrifice himself and the Matrix of Leadership to return the life-producing power of the Allspark to Cybertron, meaning that while Bumblebee is technically the leader of the Autobots, he's also not. He's not the proper leader of the Autobots, because he doesn't have the Matrix of Leadership, because now no one can. Which leads directly into some of the stuff in the next series that I didn't particularly like. That kind of turned me off to it early. Primarily that Optimus makes Bumblebee his successor, and yet Bumblebee doesn't seem to have any significant leadership role in Cybertronian society come the start of that sequel series. Also, it's just so lame that it ends with Optimus sacrificing himself, because Optimus Prime, like if you know anything about the character, he's known for three things: fighting Megatron, having a cool voice, and dying and coming back to life. So, like, we already knew our ID was happening at this point by the time this came out. So, like, we all knew Optimus was going to come back to life. It was just a given. So it just really just ruins the emotional weight of this ending. Because it just doesn't have any. But Bumblebee is good in this. The other characters are good in this. The action is fine. The final action sequence probably could have been a little better, but it's fine. And Predaking and the Predacons are still cool, and it was nice to see other Predacons actually up and doing stuff, so we could actually see some of the other toy designs in action, because we got a lot of Predacon toys for there being only 3 Predacons in the entire freaking show. I don't know, I don't dislike it. I want to be clear about that. I don't think this is bad. I think it's worse than the actual ending to the show. Like, it just isn't as good an episode as that episode was. And so I just have really mixed feelings about it overall, in the context of it being the last thing that this show ever did. Like, there's the sequel, and I am going to talk about the sequel in more detail than I already have on the channel at some point in the future. I don't know if we'll go right into that or I'll wait a while. But RID is a very different beast than Prime. It's a very different show with a very different feel. And while it does follow up on some of the stuff from Prime, and does so fairly well from what I understand, I still haven't watched the whole thing. It is not the sequel that this show deserved. And I feel like the movie more sets up a sequel than the show itself did. The ending of the show feeling like a proper ending. So I kind of just wish the show had ended there. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense to you guys? Regardless, what do you guys think of the Transformers Prime finale movie, if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. In particular, I want to know how you guys feel about the Megatron turning good thing. So I've encountered some very mixed opinions about this. But let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias, as well as a link to where you can purchase my first trilogy of novels, all 3 of which are currently available for purchase. In the meantime, though, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.